Welcome back, guys. In this video we're going to be back to the motor. I think I finally have the correct tool up there to get the harmonic balancer on, so we'll start there. Assuming that's correct, I'm pretty sure it will be correct. We'll get the balancer on and then we can start mocking up the accessories on the front of the block and hopefully get the block, the motor back in the engine bay for a test fit there. Actually, we may just permanently put it in once the accessory's on. We'll see where we get. Real quick, I got these three 12-sided 12-point bolts in. They're torqued down. This is secure enough for me to get fitting done. These Torx head bolts here are, according to the ATI instructions, a T40 plus, and they say absolutely do not use a regular T40. Next, I'll stick on the block adapters for the water, just so we know where those are at, and we can start to lay out the rest of it. Trial number 2 on getting this thing in here. Got it mounted, sort of. It's pretty loose down there, but you can see plenty of clearance on this windshield wiper motor now, so that won't be an issue. And then I'm starting to mess with the spacing here. So there's the harmonic balancer installed. It's still loose. I mean, it's not all the way threaded in. The silver bolts are threaded all the way in and torqued down. The black ones are not threaded and torqued down. Obviously, you can see that. I was thinking I might be able to low mount the alternator, but it's really tight in there, and under load, this engine might twist a little bit and cause it to just kind of rub up against or crush that alternator. So I don't think that's gonna stay there. I like it. I like the weight down lower, but keep the center of gravity lower, but pretty sure that's not gonna work. So the next option is high mount. So let me play with this. I got to figure out where that alternator is going to go, where power steering is going to go, and then start mocking up brackets. Got the motor back out and kind of looked at placement where everything's going to go. As you saw, the low mount on the alternator is not going to work, and any of the existing bracket systems out there for mounting an alternator and a power steering pump are made with the idea that the OEM water pump will still be in place, and I'm running an electric remote water pump with these ports on the block, which means I need to make my own back bracketry. So I ordered up just some aluminum plate. It's a 1/2 inch thick 6061 aluminum, and I'm going to figure out how to mount it up here and cut it and drill it and make my own brackets. I have 2 of these, so I'll be able to put the alternator on here. I may need to get a couple more of these because I think the power steering pump is going to end up over on the driver's side, but we'll see where we can get with this on the alternator, see if I have any left over, or I may end up cutting up the ICT billet bracket that will not work for this situation. I bought it hoping I would be able to make it work, but it's not going to work for me. But I might be able to cut up the bracket enough to reuse pieces of it so I don't have to buy more aluminum plate, but we'll see how this goes. This thing to kind of sit at an angle here instead of, you know, one of these edges being flush down here, just because it will make it fit better, give me more use of the material that I need to. So I'm going to start by cutting off an angle here so that this sits at an angle. This is backwards, it faces this way, but because it was easier for me to draw it on the back side. But I basically kind of drew a rough outline of where the head would sit on this piece, and then where I want the alternator to sit relative to that. So I'm going to cut off this angle first. That should allow me to make sure that sits where I want it, and then probably drill a couple of holes so I can actually just bolt it to the head here. And then once that's bolted, then I can really start nailing down where exactly everything's going to go. So we'll start here. With a hacksaw and a cut-off wheel, but these are the tools I have. I need to get, it'd be nice to have a bandsaw that could cut 1/2 inch aluminum, but I don't have one. Let me show you what I've got so far. So I took that 1/2 inch plate of aluminum, cut it up just a little bit and set this. This is a kind of an old school alternator that I can convert to a one wire setup for the Holley Terminator. And I've basically mocked it up where I want it. I'm not going to use a belt tensioner on this. I'm just going to do it the old school way with a slotted hole and move this alternator to tension the belt. I may use like a threaded, I'm blanking on what they're called, but a little threaded rod with a kind of a two-way nut in the middle that'll allow me to expand that out if I need to. I'm not sure if I'll do that. I still need to trim a little bit to allow this to rotate a little further down. It's kind of hitting up in here right now. But so I'll trim that a little bit more so I have a little bit more maneuverability in this alternator, but that's largely where it's going to sit. I have it lined up with, it's hard to tell from this angle, but with this 4-rib. So I'm going to run a 4-rib belt. I'm not even going to use this 6-rib on the front because I'm only driving the alternator and the power steering pump. So we will use this 4-rib and it'll go around here. And then I've kind of just take a piece of electrical wiring just so I can kind of mock up where I want this alternator. So I'm kind of simulating where the belt's going to run. So basically it'll make a triangle up from the harmonic balancer, around the alternator, across to a power steering pump, and then down to this side. So I don't know if I can show this, but basically power steering pump will sit over on this side, somewhere roughly like that. It's hard to see, but something off the head. So I need to take the other aluminum plate I have and mock up a bracket for the power steering pump on this side. And that should take care of my accessories by going around and then over the top of the outlets and inlets for the coolant. I should stay out of the way of that. Where the belt runs will potentially cause, I'll just have to be careful with these connectors. I think the only one that really matters is this one, and I'm not even sure that it matters. This is for the VLOM, I think. The AFM and DOD has already been deleted, so that one I don't think it's used at all. And I'll have to look up which sensor that is, but I think that might be oil pressure, but I'll have to look it up. And then we've got a vacuum port here that I don't think it's used either. So yeah, so I'll just have to look out for that electrical connector and make sure it stays away from the moving belt. But that's kind of where we're at. And then I am gonna probably trim this bracket up, maybe kind of, I think I actually drew some lines here, just kind of beautify this a little bit so it's not as square. I don't really need this, so I may trim in here just to kind of beautify it a little bit, but I'm not sure I will do that either. So the work continues. Fabricated for the power steering pump here, and then I've got this kind of set in but not set in all the way. So let me show you what I'm looking at here and some modifications that are going to have to change. First, I cannot set it all the way down there. You might not be able to tell, but the lower mount and the upper motor mount are not aligned, probably off by about an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, maybe not quite an inch, and the reason is because this bracket is actually hitting. So there's plenty of room that I could probably remove 2 inches of material there on the bottom of the alternator. That'll have to happen so that this can actually go all the way down. And then I kind of roughly mocked up this just piece of wire to kind of simulate where the belt's going to go. So we should have plenty of clearance between the shock mount or K-member mount, upper control arm mount there, and where the belt's going to go. So that's good. I just need to pull some material out of the bottom of that bracket. And then over here, let me walk around. This is also not all the way down, partially because of the motor's roughly level, but we are not touching on this upper control arm mount, but pretty close. So this bracket is sitting a little too low. So that probably needs to come up an inch. We're going to be good on the belt once that comes up an inch. So I will probably just re-drill this hole an inch, inch and a half lower, and then pick up. I'm not gonna be able to use that hole because that's at the bottom of the bracket, but there are a few other holes at the front of this head, so I'll have to pick up some other holes and just move this thing up an inch, inch and a half. I'll have to kind of measure. I'll have to put the intake on and make sure we have clearance once I move this up an inch, inch and a half, and we're not hitting the bottom of the throttle body, but I think we should be fine there. And then this also, I just put this on here so I could take some measurements, but this will need to come spaced out, I think about an inch, maybe an inch and a half, because these pulleys are not aligned. It's hard to see. There's not alignment on those pulleys right now. The alternator and the lower pulley are aligned, but the power steering pump is not. So onward with the fabrication. Well, I am getting excited. It is in. The hoist is off of it, and it may stay in at this point. We'll see. I might have to pull it back out. It seems like it's been in and out 5 or 6 times at this point, but got the bottom of that bracket trimmed up. We are bolted all the way down and tightened up. Let me put this light down for a second here. This is not really tightened down, and this is not tightened down, but it's largely where it's the alternator's largely where it's going to rest. I still have to cut a little spacer here, so that I think that's going to be an inch spacer on this side, so I can put a bolt through here and tighten that up. But it's good enough for the moment. Over on this side, this probably needs to come out another 1/2 inch. I threw just a couple of scrap pieces of this aluminum plate that I cut off. It's an inch, or it's a 1/2 inch thick aluminum plate, so 2 of them makes an inch, and not quite enough. Probably needs another 1/2 inch, so I'll worry about spacers later there. This is not the final hardware. I'm gonna have to get a little bit longer bolt. Also, I didn't have a 3rd bolt for down here. You can't really see it, but there'll be a 3rd bolt that goes in there. So probably all this hardware, I'll just buy new hardware and make it match. There's a bolt missing here that I don't have the right size for, because it's a different thread than these two. So we'll worry about that hardware later, but everything is, for the most part, in its final resting place. This, I just bought this, and then I dropped it while I was working and completely cracked all the plastic in this pulley. So I'll have to pull that back off, get a new one and put one on, but plenty of clearance to do that. The raised height, there's plenty of clearance underneath the throttle body for that belt to go on. And all the belt routing, let me just check this real quick, but this, actually I checked this before, yeah. Plenty good on the belt routing over here. So clearance for the belts all around. The routing of the belt down here and then up over should leave enough clearance for these waters, the coolant passages, the hoses to come straight out. I'm gonna have to figure out a power steering setup, because this is the OEM Corvette high pressure side, the line, so I'll have to figure that out. The port is here, and then a reservoir will go up here. I don't necessarily like that the reservoir is going to stick way up here, but it is what it is for the routing. Okay, let me show you what I got over here. First, it does clear, just barely, but it does clear, and I think once I get the transmission, it'll probably actually lift that up just a little bit. But that actually becomes a concern with these headers. Let's see. That is right about level, maybe a little bit lower. With these headers, you can see this probably, based on the size of my finger, this probably needs to come up another inch. And this back primary, cylinder 4 primary, is hitting right here. That I'd have to dent quite a bit. So I might try it. The other option would be to cut back the fiberglass a little bit. I might go that route as well, but let's take a look underneath as well. Okay, that is the collector. I dropped it so it dented it a little bit, but so it's not perfectly round, unfortunately. But I think we're gonna have plenty of clearance on this side. Once it'll actually, it'll go up a little bit, like an inch or so, once I get that bolted up. But you can see right there is where, right up there is where it's hitting.
So we'll have to either dent it or cut the fiberglass, or maybe both. I don't know that I really want it touching the fiberglass, so I'll have to take a look at that. You guys saw the driver's side header on there already. There's plenty of clearance on that side. And then let me show you underneath here. We've got, it's hard to see, but there is clearance all the way around. It did end up notching the frame just a little bit. Okay, some of you may have seen this trick before, but just in case, I'll show you how I'm going to measure my belt out. So I've just got this string I've wrapped around the pulleys and the routing that's going to go in, and then I'm just going to take this twine here, kind of mark with my fingers. You could take a marker, I suppose, mark where that's going to be, and then I can take this to a tape measure and measure this out. It'll give me the length of the belt I need, and then I can go to the part store and hopefully get the proper size belt. It should be pretty close. I might have to go up and down or an inch, but it should get me close enough as a starting point. That's going to do it for this video. I'm really happy the motor is finally in, and I think it's going to stay there. I don't think I'll have to pull it back out. I'm still waiting on that QuickTime bell housing to arrive. Hopefully that does so in the next couple weeks. But in the meantime, while we wait, we'll finish up next probably the water pump. Still got fuel lines to run from the back, and I need to completely redo the steering shaft, the steering column. So all that needs to be done, and then I can also start working on the Holley terminator system and putting the wiring in for that. So we'll see where I get to next. I will talk about this for just a quick second. These brackets, I'm going to leave them where they're the way they are for right now. Maybe at some point in the future I'll clean them up. They're aluminum, so I could probably polish them and make them look nice and shiny like these valve covers. But for the moment, I'm just going for functional. I want to get this thing running, and then at some point in the future I can pull those off, clean them up and make them look pretty. Maybe put some speed holes in them or lighten them up, and not that they're that heavy to begin with. So that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.